right, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Megan Rogers, and I am the staff counsel for the Palm Beach County Commission on Ethics, and this is our ethics training for employees, official, and advisory board members for all of our county employees, as well as our municipal employees. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Commission on Ethics itself, its purpose, the type of work that we do as a governmental body. We'll talk about some ethics decision-making strategies. We've done some research from Commission staff about what are the issues that can become blind spots for officials and employees that may not be a violation of the Code of Ethics, but can raise ethical questions. So we'll take a look at those. And then we'll look at the Code of Ethics itself. Now, you'll find if you look through the 11-page code that we have, the majority of it is dedicated to getting rid of the appearance of impropriety. We're trying to increase the public's trust in government, and we do that through prohibiting certain types of conflicts of interest. Majority of the provisions of the code are dealing with conflicts of interest. Now, as you're taking a look at your watches today, when we get to the gift law section of the code, we are in the steep descent to the end of our training. You can breathe a deep sigh of relief and know that our limited time together is almost at its end. So we'll talk about the gift law, we'll talk about a few miscellaneous provisions, and then we'll talk about our complaint process, and hopefully I can answer any questions that you may have about the code, how it may apply to you, or your interaction with the Commission. So moving on to our general training, our frequently asked questions. So you just took this training. Many of you have taken this training in the last year or the last 2 years. And the training policy is set by your municipality or by the county. The county's training policy is every 3 years. Some municipalities have elected to have us come on train every year. So it's based upon the training cycle that has been set by your local ordinance. Now, you're lucky today because it's not the same training that you had 2, 3, or a year ago. This is a new training, and this is really based upon the interpretations that have been made by the Commission in the course of advisory opinions and reviewing complaints that have come into our office. So this is different from what you've seen before. Generally speaking, the Code of Ethics promotes honest and ethical behavior in government, okay? Promotes public trust in government, and it does it through eliminating appearances of impropriety. If you have a concern about the code, the most important thing that you can walk away from in this training is to just call our office and ask. We are a public service office. We're here to serve you as officials, employees, and advisory board members. And so it's really important if you think, you know, that ethics lady, she told me something, and something in the back of my mind is nagging at me. I think I have an ethical issue here, or it might be a prohibited gift. Make sure you just give our office a call. We respond to advisory opinions within the course of from 2 days to 3 days. We can always do an expedited advisory opinion for you if you're on a short time limit. Or if it's something that's more complicated, we'll bring it before our Commission and have them opine on it. That's something that you can take with you as guidance as you move forward during the course of your employment or in your public service. So who does this code apply to? It applies to all county employees, it applies to all county advisory board members, and all municipal elected officials, employees, and advisory members. So it's a very large group of people. It's over 15,000 people in our community. So this code has a wide scope. Let's move on to talking a little bit more about what the ethics movement in Palm Beach County is designed to do. So we talked about that issue with conflicts of interest and improving public trust in government, eliminated the appearance of impropriety. And the drafters of the ethics movement came up with 3 ways to look at this, 3 individual targets that go towards that exact function, decreasing the appearance of impropriety in government. So we have the Commission on Ethics, the Inspector General's office, and then the State Attorney's office. 3 unique, separate organizations. And many times in our office, we get sometimes confused, or people are not sure what the difference is between the work that we do and the work the Inspector General's office does. So I'd like to give you an example to talk a little bit about the differences between our offices. So let's say that you have a parking ticket clerk, and she processes parking tickets for a local municipality. And her brother comes in and he pays his $100 parking ticket. Her sister comes in, she pays her $100 parking ticket. Members of the public come in, they pay their $100 parking tickets. No issue with the Code of Ethics, no issue with the Inspector General's office. Now, if that same parking ticket clerk has any one of us from the general public come in and we pay our $100 parking ticket, but for her sister or her mother or her brother or her boss at her outside job, she says, oh, you know, I'm going to waive this ticket for you. You don't have to pay that $100. It's a violation of our misuse of office provision that we're going to talk about later today. She treated those people with whom she has an outside relationship with differently than she treats all members of the public. Right? So our office looks at those individual actions. We would say, you violated the code of ethics, you violated the misuse of office provision, and you've used your official position to give your brother, your sister, your mother a special financial benefit that's not given to the rest of the public. What the Inspector General's office would do is say, what systems are in place to prevent an employee from being able to have that type of discretion, to be able to use their position to give that $100 financial benefit. So we look at the individual action, whereas the IG's office more looks at the systems that are in place that would create the issues of the appearance of impropriety. So moving on to our ethics decision-making tree, as we call it. Now this is some research that staff has done from Cisco Systems, and they've come up with this program, and it's been really it's been looked at as a model for large corporations and governments in terms of making these types of ethical decisions. So first question you ask yourself, is it legal, right? Okay, is it fraud? Is it some other thing where State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg is going to come and put you in cuffs, right? Easy question. You know, is it legal, is it not legal? Number two, does it comply with the code of ethics, right? Does it comply with the code that we're going to talk about today, right? If you have a question, call our office, and we'll see if we can answer that question for you, present it to the commission for further discussion, you know, or we can give you an advisory opinion that we've already done and say, no, that's fine. You're absolutely ready to go. Number three, does it comply with your internal policy? So we talked about how the county and municipalities may have different training requirements. So, for example, the town of Palm Beach has a more restrictive gift law than the gift law we'll talk about today. So does it comply with a policy that your government has in place, right? That goes perhaps beyond the code of ethics or that's unrelated to the code of ethics, something like an outside employment policy that you would be required to follow. Number four, could it create problems for your department or the people you serve? Does your decision that you're making create some internal tension that may not benefit, again, looking at benefit to the general public? But most importantly, and this is the one that really resonates with me, is how would you feel if your actions were shown on the Channel 5 or the nightly news, okay? So one of the things I think that we're seeing more frequently in government is that you have the news reporter chasing down the person in the blue minivan. Isn't it true that you did this? Right? Might not be a violation of the code of ethics. Might not be a violation of the law. But it creates that appearance of impropriety. And so I think it's a good, it's kind of a good barometer for you to look at. If someone caught me on tape doing this, maybe it doesn't create any problems for you in your employment, but it does create some other issues. So I attended a social media event, and it was, you know, learning how to deal with social media as a professional in the world. And the person who was giving this presentation was the producer for an investigative news team. And she said, social media is the best thing that has ever happened to investigative journalism. Well, really? Like, you know, doesn't it kind of eliminate the need in many ways? Don't we use Twitter to get out news instead of a traditional newspaper? She said, I had elected officials in California who said, their official Twitter page said, we are, breaking ground on this phenomenal hospital facility, and we are helping the children of this local area and giving back time to the community. So that's what they said they were doing, from 2 to 4 on an afternoon. But turns out they were over there checking on Foursquare to a bar having drinks with their buddies. Perfect example. That's not a violation of the code of ethics at all, okay? But it is something, if that appeared on the Channel 5 nightly news, it creates problems for you, and it creates problems for the people you serve. So that's kind of my always good gut check barometer for you to keep in mind. So moving on to the code of ethics. There's the legal standard, and then there's the appearance of impropriety standard. So what do you have to do? Where is the line, and where will the commission get involved in terms of our complaint process? and in terms of finding and its other powers that it has. Where is the line, and then where are you crossing it? Then aside from that line, there's that area between you and the Channel 5 news team, okay? It's that gray area where it may not be a violation of the Code of Ethics, but it gets close, and where you may be creating a scenario where you would need to go in front of the commission to defend your actions. And that's what we want to keep you away from. So we've got the Code of Ethics, the minimum legal standard, and then we've got the appearance of impropriety standards, the good government standard, I like to call it. So moving on to our substantive discussion today, conflicts of interest, okay? Conflicts of interest, again, they're those relationships that create and interfere with how you may do your job or how you may serve as an elected official or advisory board member. And those conflicts of appearance are those issues that create the appearance of impropriety that we're trying to prevent with the Code of Ethics. So these are all of the provisions that are related to conflicts of interest in our code. You can see it's extensive. We've got an 11-page code, and majority of them are designated to really address those conflicts of interest that either have a historical basis in Palm Beach County or that have created issues for other elected officials or employees in other governments. So let's take a look at misuse of office. If you walk away with one thing today, this is the big overarching issue to take a look at. So misuse of office, remember that parking ticket clerk, and she used her position to give a different benefit to her parent, her mother, or her sibling than to everyone else. If you or I came in to see her and pay our parking ticket, we didn't get that type of treatment. That's what we're looking at in misuse of office, okay? Looking at using your official position, your government job, or your board membership to give something different, a different benefit, a financial benefit, to someone with whom you have an outside relationship, whether it be your relative, your customer or client, or perhaps your outside employer or your own business. Now, special financial benefit, that's anything of value, okay? So that could be a ticket to an event, or it could be a cash payment. And misuse of office is a broad section of the code. These are all of the different areas that it touches. So it reaches out just not only to you, but again to your relatives and to the people you may work with in a part-time job or in a business that you own. Now let's take a look at some examples. So, and I'm going to ask for participation from y'all on this one. Code enforcement officer is assigned to inspect a property owned by his sister, okay? General rule, we can't use our official position to give a special financial benefit to one of our relatives. So do you think that he can inspect the property? I see some yeses, I see some nos. The answer is yes. The code allows for him to inspect that property so long as he treats his sister like he treats everyone else. So he walks into her house and it is beautiful. You know, the floorboards have just been laid perfectly, and the lighting is extraordinary, and he checks her off and says, congratulations on your new home. He walks into his sister's house, and there's sparks flying out of the ceiling. His foot falls through the floorboard. He checks her off, misuse of office, okay? So as long as he treats her the same as he treats everyone else, he's not prohibited by the code from inspecting that property. But what do you think? Should he inspect the property? And to that one, the answer is no. That's our appearance of impropriety standard. So it doesn't violate the code, but if you have someone in the public, perhaps someone who is politically motivated, looking to file a complaint against the building department, and they see that he has inspected his sister's property, that's a real easy thing for them to file with our commission, okay? So that's the tension between our legal standard and our appearance of impropriety standard. In those cases, best recommendation, best practice, again, is to not participate in that type of, not to process that parking ticket, not to inspect that home. Now, this is a very unique provision in our code. And our misuse of office provision prohibits an elected official, employee, or an advisory board member from using their official position, so that's generally one's title, so, Mayor X or Council Member Y, to benefit a nonprofit organization where they serve on the board of that organization. And here's our example. Elected official serves on the board of a nonprofit organization. Let's say it's the Loggerhead Marine Life Center up in Juno Beach. That organization is applying for grant funding from the board where they serve. May that elected official participate and vote on giving that grant funding to that organization? What do y'all think? I see a yes. I see some no's over here. The answer in this case is no, okay? The answer in this case is no, because by giving the grant funding to that elected official, to that organization by the elected official, they're choosing that organization over others that have applied, okay? So the same thing would be true if they were doing a solicitation on behalf of that organization. So Loggerhead Marine Life Center is having an event, and they want Mayor Y to solicit on behalf of the foundation. Mayor Y could solicit on behalf of that foundation all day in their personal capacity, but what they couldn't do is use the title that have been given to them by the people, mayor, to benefit that nonprofit organization. Okay? So it's a bit of a unique position in our code. It's something that isn't addressed by the state code, and it's something that isn't addressed by many ethics codes, but that has a historical basis here in Palm Beach County. So let's take a look at voting conflicts. Stem from the same idea that our misuse of office stem from. It's the same issue with official action. So you have a landscape designer who serves on a municipal tree board, okay? And his company files a design for a landscape plan. That plan needs to be approved by his board before it can move forward through the process to be finally approved for development. Basic question, may that landscape designer vote on that project? You see no's, and that's the right answer, okay? No, he may not vote on that project. He may not use his official position to give a benefit to his customer or client, the person he's developing the project for, all right? Now, can he abstain from voting, take off his board member hat, put it down back over here, and then walk over to the podium and speak and advocate on behalf of that project? What do y'all think? I see some yeses. I see maybe no here. I see a yes out here. The answer is no, okay? The answer is no, and it's unique to our code because we prohibit participation in any way. And the reason is this. So when he sits up here, he has this collegial relationship, hypothetically, with his board members. Now, we all know that some boards do not always have a collegial relationship, but assuming that they do, sits up here and his board members have respect for him and for his position and for perhaps his professional work. The code looks at that issue that he doesn't really take off that hat. He doesn't really take off those vestiges of respect that he's given as a fellow board member when he comes down and stands behind the podium over here, okay? And so for that reason, we prohibit not only an elected official from voting on a project like that, but also from participating in any manner, right? And for elected officials and advisory board members out there who may perhaps deal with this situation, you must abstain from voting and file an 8B form with the clerk that sits for your board and within 15 days of the abstention. So moving on to corrupt misuse of official position. We've covered our voting conflict section, and we've covered misuse of office, using that official position to give someone a special financial benefit, unique from the benefit you would give to all members of the public. Corrupt misuse of official position is the only section of the code that isn't tied to that monetary or financial benefit that we're looking at in all other areas, okay? This can be any benefit, no matter how minute in terms of a financial benefit. It can be something like prestige. So that's what we're looking at there. And we'll look at this in the course of 2 examples, but the thing to keep in mind is that this section prohibits you from using your official position in a manner that's inconsistent with the proper performance of your duties. Okay? Inconsistent with the proper performance of your duties as an elected official, advisory board member, or employee. So here's one of our first example. Elected official gets into a road rage incident with one of the citizens in their town. This is not from Palm Beach County, this is from North Florida. So gets into a road rage incident and they pull over to the side of the road and they're going back and forth. And the citizen says, you know what, I'm going to call the police. And the elected official says, go ahead, call the police. I own the police, right? Corrupt misuse of official position. There's no financial benefit associated with that, but the elected official is using their power inconsistent with the proper performance of their duties. Police benefit the public, do not benefit the elected official individually, okay? corrupt misuse of official position. So it's the I own the police scenario. But this one's a little bit different, and this one is from Palm Beach County. So every employee in a Palm Beach County department is required to sit for a certification examination. And the examination is given on a Monday, a Tuesday, and a Thursday. Test taker from Monday is taking the exam, and during the course of the exam hits control print for each screen of the examination. It turns out examination is the same on Monday and Tuesday and Thursday, right? It's the same the whole day. So that first test was exactly the same as the last test given on that Thursday. Then he distributes that exam, copy of the test that they need to take as county employees, to a few people in his department. Remember when we talked about how your actions might create tension within a department? This certainly created tension within a department that half of the department had the answers to the exam and half didn't, right? So he distributes the exam to a few of his coworkers and allowed them to cheat on the exam. What do you think? Violation of the Code of Ethics? Yeah. I see nodding here. Absolutely. Inconsistent with the proper performance of your duties, right? Common sense. Don't cheat on an exam, right? That's easy. See? Look, and now we finished corrupt misuse of official position. Moving on to contractual relationships. All right. So our general rule, as an employee, as an official, as an advisory board member, you're prohibited from having a contract with the government you serve aside from your employment contract. So you're an employee who owns a t-shirt company, right? And Palm Beach County wants to have t-shirts for a 4th of July event. Well, unless an exception applies, you're prohibited from providing those t-shirts to Palm Beach County. So that's our general rule. Prohibited from having a contract with the government you serve. For our municipal officials and employees, again, it applies only to the government that you work for. So if you work out in Wellington, you provide all the t-shirts you want to Palm Beach Gardens or to Loxahatchee Groves or to Palm Beach County, but just not the government that you serve. So that's our general rule. But as is the case with most sections of this code, we have several exceptions, okay? And they make common sense, and let's take a look at them in the course of a few examples. So for our advisory board members, this prohibition is limited to the department you oversee. So if you work for OfficeMax as an advisory board member, the department that you oversee, so in our case, the Commission on Ethics, we have a commissioner who works for OfficeMax. If our department purchases supplies from OfficeMax, that's a prohibited contractual relationship unless an exception applies, right? So for our advisory board members, it's just limited to the area that you really have authority over, right? And that makes good sense. We're assuming that an advisory board member who sits on planning and zoning, who may have contracts with Parks and Recreation, can't use that official position on planning and zoning to influence the decisions that a separate and unrelated department makes, okay? So here are our examples. You're an employee for the town of Palm Beach, and the town of Palm Beach has boat slips for rental. You rent a boat slip from the town of Palm Beach. You have a contract with the town. Do you think that's a violation of the code? Under our general rule, what's the answer? Our general rule is yes, right? You have a contract with the government you serve. But it doesn't make sense, right? Because you're getting something that's available to all members of the general public. Anyone can go rent a boat slip from the town of Palm Beach. We have an exception that addresses that specifically. So no, you wouldn't be prohibited from having that type of relationship, right? Because available to everyone. It's just like if you bought your power from the town of Lake Worth, right? Makes good sense. How about this? So general rule again, you are prohibited from having a contractual relationship with the government you serve. Your spouse wants to open concessions at Palm Beach International Airport. PBIA is a county department, so overseen by the county. Is your spouse prohibited from having that type of relationship? No. No, absolutely not. The only time when that type of a relationship would be prohibited is if you own at least 5% of the company, right? So if that's really your outside business, then you're prohibited again from, it all goes back to that misuse of office section, having that inside information to be able to obtain that contract on behalf of your spouse or the appearance of that. And so the contractual relationship section really looks at the appearance that somehow an internal employee is using their job to benefit themselves in their outside contracts rather than looking at the actual action. Yes?
Would that apply to a sealed bid too?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. We'll get there very shortly. So our next exception, contracts under $500. What do you think? Does it make sense to prohibit an employee from entering into contracts with the government for less than $500? Do you think the code reaches that far? Mm-hmm. It does not. It does not reach that far, okay? So fire rescue sends out a request for hazardous materials training at the airport. And the amount that's going to be paid for that training is $450. Can the employee enter into that contract? Yes. Okay. Another exception to our general rule is for contracts that are less than $500. Now, let's take it outside of Palm Beach County. This is one of my favorite slides. I get very excited about it. I don't know if you all watch the Mars mission. Oh, it's good stuff. So, you work as a mission director for NASA, and we're going to assume that NASA has the exact same code that we do. Years ago, you created a computer program that NASA purchased for you. Years ago, before the code went into effect, you created this computer program. And it's a great program. NASA wants to continue to use it. But you're prohibited from entering into a contractual relationship with them to service the program. So you're the only person who can service the software, but the code would otherwise prohibit it because you'd be entering into a new contractual relationship. Do you think the code prohibits it? It's an exception, exactly right. Why? Because we're in the exception section of the code. Absolutely right. We are in the exception section. So if you are the sole source who can service the software, if you're the sole source of provision of a certain type of good or service that the county or municipality is looking to purchase, then that's an exception to our contractual relationships section of the code, right? We don't want to prohibit the county from being able to take advantage of a unique type of service just because an employee is the one and the only one who provides it. This is a true story. This actually comes out of West Palm Beach. We'll take NASA out of it for a moment, but the EMS services that were created by fire rescue employee 10, 15 years ago, their software system that they use to provide those services. And over the course of time, he's moved up through the department. He's done very well with the city of West Palm Beach, but he still is the only person who can provide those services. They are a program created by him, maintained by him, and the city has to maintain an ongoing relationship for the servicing of that contract until the city decides to change its servicing program, decides to change who provides that software. And so for that reason, because, again, he's the only person who can provide those types of services, it's an exception to our rule. Sealed bid and low bid contracts, okay? So we have a provision for a sealed bid contract. Your outside business is entering into a contract with the government you serve as long as you enter it during a sealed bid process, and there are specific requirements for that. You cannot oversee the bid process, right? You can't be on the bid committee. You cannot use your influence. That misuse of office section comes back into it to persuade your governmental entity to award you the bid. And prior to submission of the bid, you must file a statement with the supervisor of elections, okay, disclosing your interest in the company that is applying for this contract. Once that happens, so long as you are the low bid, you are the least expensive option, there is no prohibition under the contractual relationship section of the code. Finally, another exception. So, because we have a significant number of county or municipal employees who have outside employment, and many times their outside employment may be for a large corporation that regularly does business with Palm Beach County or with the municipality. So, here's our example. A county Parks and Recreation employee works at Home Depot every other weekend. But the county has contracts in excess of $500, right? Our $500 exception, in excess of $500 with the Home Depot. Under our general rule, could the employee continue her part-time employment? The answer would be no, okay? Because her outside employer has a contract with the government she works for. But we have an exception for that because it doesn't make common sense, right? We don't want to prohibit someone who doesn't oversee that contract, that doesn't have the ability to use their position to give something different to that outside employer. So we have an exception for it. And it requires that You don't oversee the contract. So if you're the person who awards all bids to Home Depot, you can't have that outside job, right? It's appearance of impropriety again and again. Your part-time employment doesn't interfere with your public job. So you're not doing, you're not a software services person who is doing all their work for Google on county time, right? Doesn't interfere with the proper performance of your job. You didn't participate in awarding the contract during the course of the bid process. You've complied with whatever merit rule or other outside employment requirements you may have with your municipality or with the county. And then finally, you file a conflict of interest form with the Commission on Ethics that declares all of these things. It's a checklist and it's available on our website. Keep in mind, these are only for businesses that have contracts with the county. So if you work for Dee Dee's Cupcakes up in Jupiter, Dee Dee's has no contracts with Palm Beach County and you're a county employee, no need to even deal with any of this kind of stuff, okay? You're a representative for Avon and you work for the city of Lake Worth, right? City of Lake Worth does not have contracts with Avon. No reason for this to even get involved, for this to even be on your radar. It's only when the county or your municipality has a contract with your outside employer or with your business. So travel expenses. In the gift law, and I know that you all have heard this before, we have the prohibition on gifts from vendors, right? But we have an explicit prohibition on vendors providing travel expenses to county or municipal employees, advisory board members, and elected officials, okay? You may not accept any travel expenses, $0, from a vendor of the county or your municipality unless it is waived by your elected board, okay? Very, very important. We don't want to prohibit the county or municipality from taking advantage of the great educational opportunities you may have by attending a vendor conference. But again, we're looking at that appearance of impropriety. You get to go to a conference in Orlando, $10,000 value, and you don't pay anything for it. Are you going to select that vendor over another the next time, right? You may not, and you may never even have that intention. But again, it's looking at the appearance. What does that look like? Does it look like there's something, for lack of a better term, nefarious going on? So we make it transparent, and it has to be waived by either the Board of County Commissioners as a county employee or by your municipal governing body. Very, very important. Disclosure of inside information. As all of you know, very little information in the state of Florida is not subject to a public records request, almost nothing. But here's our example. County Planning and Zoning staff member has drafted several options for the extension of a major road through the acreage. She's got option A, B, C, and D, all right? And she goes and she speaks with each one of the county commissioners independently. And she gets the sense from the commissioners that 5 of the commissioners are going to vote for option B, okay? Just a sense. It's just a sense that she has. They said, I think this is the best option for the county, but that's not part of any record. They haven't spoken about it. They haven't shared that. It's not compiled in an email or something of that nature. What she can't do is take that information that she gathered from those conversations and go buy up all the land that surrounds option B, right? She can't use her intimate access to the governmental process to give herself a financial benefit. Goes right back to our misuse of office section, but again, it's targeted at looking at that inside information. And this section, of course, it mirrors all of those SEC rules that are more and more frequently in the paper these days. So, nepotism. Elected officials, department managers, advisory board members are prohibited from appointing, employing, promoting, or advancing family members, relatives, right? So the general rule on this is if a family member is applying and you have to vote on it, you may not vote, okay? If a family member is applying for employment, you need to stay out of it. And if you have any of these questions, it's the perfect thing to call us on. Say, I have a family member that's applying for an advisory board member position. I have a family member who's applying for employment. How should I proceed? How should they proceed and how should I proceed? There's no prohibition about 2 family members working in the same governmental entity. But again, it's the use of your position to give your family member additional access or some other benefit that wouldn't be available to all their candidates. It goes right back to our misuse of office section. So we are at the gift law, and if you recall at the very beginning of our training, I said when we got to the gift law, we were on the steep decline towards the end of our conversation today. So there are 3 things you need to keep in mind about the gift law. Number 1, no kickbacks, bribes, or tips, right? That's easy. 0 gift law, no kickbacks, bribes, or tips. Other part of our 0 gift law, you may not request, you may not solicit anything of value. 0 amount of value from a vendor or lobbyist of the government you serve. If you work for Palm Beach County and a lobbyist is a meeting with you in the course of your official business, you cannot say, hey lobbyist, it'd be really nice if you paid for lunch today. Or, hey lobbyist, it'd be really nice if you gave me $1,000. Both of those things, absolutely prohibited. Second section of our gift law, and we'll talk about each of these a little bit more in detail in just a moment, but second section is our $100 limit. You may not accept anything of value in excess of $100 from a vendor or lobbyist, again, of the government that you serve. And finally, our reporting requirements. You must report any gift in excess of $100 that you receive. That is, again, you're not accepting from a vendor or lobbyist, so this is from other people, unless an exception applies. And we've found the majority of the type of gifts that people receive are not going to be reportable, but we'll take a look at what you should be looking at to report over the next course of the calendar year. So going back to our first section, city cashier does an extraordinary job, helps a citizen paying their water bill. It's a bit complicated. You know, they've been in default for a while and they've got to work through it. She does a great job. She said, thank you so much for helping me out. Here's $20. Please take yourself out to lunch. May she accept it? Absolutely not. Okay, so this is our kickback. This is our bribe. This is our tip. Okay, it's not a bribe. It's not a kickback, but it certainly is a tip, right? And she's being paid for doing her for doing her job, for doing what she's been employed to do. But how about this? Waiter at a municipal golf course provides absolutely horrendous service, just terrible. Nonetheless, the kind golfers provide him a tip anyway. May he accept it? Yes. Okay. Yes, because it's how he is traditionally paid. So that is a bit of a distinction there for anyone who works in one of those fields for a county golf course, for municipal golf course, or in those traditional areas like tennis coaching, parks and recreation, where there may be tips involved as part of your compensation. So we've got our $100 gift law prohibition from vendors and lobbyists. County employee 3 county IT employees are invited by a county contractor to go to Vegas. And they're going to go on the private jet of the company. They're going to play some golf, they're going to attend a car show, and they're going to attend some conversation about their, the product over the course of this time. May they accept? No, right? It's more than $100. But what did I say just probably 5 minutes ago about vendor travel expenses? They could accept that trip if it's waived by these folks sitting up here, okay? And so that's the important distinction. Now, I don't think any of you believe, I certainly don't, that these folks would say, oh yeah, county employees, you go ahead, go to Vegas, go on the jet, that definitely looks good politically, I'm going to do that. No, right? So, again, can always accept travel expenses from vendors, but they must be waived by your elected officials, okay? Now, reporting, okay? Reporting gifts in excess of $100. Political contributions are not reportable gifts. Gifts from relatives or members of your household are not reportable gifts, right? That's, I think, the really important one, because the majority of the gifts that we receive that are more than $100 are usually from relatives, family members, and personal friends. Now, if someone walks up to you on the street and says, here's $1,000, you're just awesome, I'm just giving $1,000 to everyone I see today, congratulations, enjoy yourself this weekend, go somewhere fabulous, but report that gift, okay? Those are the type of gifts that we're looking for in terms of reporting. Your colleague provides you with a birthday present, your neighbor takes you and your spouse out to dinner, your cousin comes into town and treats you to a night out at City Place. Wonderful. Those are not reportable gifts. Okay, that's not what we're targeting. We're looking for things like that are generally related to your employment. So an example of reportable gifts are Palm Beach firefighters and police officers are often invited to attend specific social events during season on the island. And so they may accept tickets that are $250, $300 a person for them and maybe their spouse, a $600 reportable gift. Those are the type of things that we're looking at for reportable gifts. That's what we're really targeting. Same thing would be true if your child receives a scholarship that's associated with your government employment, okay? So if the town of Palm Beach, for example, again, offers scholarships for children of town employees, that's a reportable gift. It's associated with your employment. Again, it's an additional benefit you're receiving. So that's the type of things that we want to see on that list. The things that we won't see on that list are awards for civic or professional achievement. Those personal gifts that are over $100. Gifts solicited for a public purpose on behalf of your employer. This makes really good sense. A county solicits money for an overhang over one of the county pools so they can host Special Olympic events. You're soliciting that on behalf of the county, not soliciting that personally. So again, it's an exception not only to our $100 gift law rule for vendors and lobbyists, can solicit that type of money for a public purpose from a vendor or a lobbyist, but again, can't solicit it for yourself personally. Inheritance, an exception to our gift law reporting requirement. And then registration fees or conference attendance that is properly waived by this body up here. It's already been made transparent by that waiver process. Now, there are a couple specific exceptions to our vendor and lobbyist requirements that are associated, though, with reporting requirements. So, there are certain types of organizations like the Business Development Board or like Sunfest that are technically vendors, right? They provide a service to Palm Beach County or to the city of West Palm Beach. And they're these kind of quasi-governmental entities out there. Those are typically considered a vendor. They fall within the definition, but we don't want to prohibit elected officials or employees from being able to accept things from that type of an entity. For that reason, as long as you're not provided with a ticket, for example, to Sunfest from a lobbyist or from another vendor, if you're provided a ticket to Sunfest just from Sunfest itself, it is reportable, but it's not prohibited. Okay, reportable but not prohibited. Now, we talked about that loggerhead marine life scenario in our misuse of office section, but this often can come up in the course of solicitations, right? And here's our example. County employee is running a race on behalf of St. Jude's Children's Hospital, and she needs to raise $2,000. She receives a $300 donation from Office Depot, a county vendor. May she accept the donation? The answer would be, under our general rule, no. She may not solicit or accept anything in excess of $100 from a county vendor. That doesn't make good sense, right? It's not going to her personal benefit. It's going to the benefit of a charity. And so in the course of revising this code over the past several years, this is one of our new exceptions, and that she may make the solicitation, she may accept that on behalf of St. Jude's, but she needs to keep a log of those solicitations. So if you're soliciting money from a vendor or lobbyist of the county or your municipality, you can go ahead and do it, but you just need to keep a log. And Palm Beach Gardens Fire Rescue has done this very successfully. They just had a large fundraiser. They solicited a significant amount of donations from vendors and lobbyists of Palm Beach Gardens, but they kept a log, they filed it with our office. That's the procedure that you have to go through. Again, if you're soliciting from vendors and lobbyists, you're soliciting from anyone else, no issue, not triggered by the code. Here's a follow-up question. She receives a $150 donation from her sister. Does she have to report it? No. No. Family member, right? Those are the type of gifts that we don't report. So for our gift disclosure requirements, most people who are participating in this training today are going to file with the Palm Beach County Commission on Ethics. If you are an elected official, you sit on a quasi-judicial board, or are a department director, perhaps, you may be a state reporting individual. If you're a state reporting individual, you file with the state, and that's done on a quarterly basis. For the rest of us, we will all be filing by November 1st with the Palm Beach County Commission of Ethics. That can be fax, email, or regular mail. Our miscellaneous provisions, honesty and applications for positions, is a pretty easy one. Don't lie on an application, right? That's not too bad. And then contingency fee prohibition. So this provision prohibits a lobbyist from taking a portion of their payment contingent on acceptance of a contract by the Board of County Commissioners or other municipal governing body. So quick guide to our online disclosure forms. We talked about the 8B voting conflict for our elected official serving on that tree board. He would need to abstain, not participate, and file his 8B form within 15 days of abstaining from voting. And he files that with his clerk. Our outside employment waiver, that's our Home Depot, our part-time Home Depot employee whose government employer has contracts with their outside employer. You're going to file that outside employment waiver. You're going to have it signed by your supervisor and by the designee of your city manager or by the county administrator. And you're going to provide that to our office. Conflict of interest statement associated with that sealed bid process. Again, if you're going to apply for a sealed bid with the county or the municipality that you serve, please call our office. Let me walk you through it. Or let someone else in our office walk you through it as well. They're all very good. Gift forms. For most of us, it'll be November 1st. If you're a state reporting individual, that's going to be on a quarterly reporting basis. Your charitable solicitation log, that runner raising money on behalf of St. Jude, she's going to file her log detailing the solicitation, the amount she received from the vendor within either 30 days of her event associated with the event, or if it's not associated with an event, just a general solicitation, she'll file that within 30 days of the solicitation itself. And finally, your ethics training acknowledgement, copies of that are available on our website. They're filed with your HR person, okay, or your clerk. They are maintained by the government that you work for. So you can ask any question. You can always contact us at ethics@palmbeachcountyethics.com. All of our contact information and email addresses are available there. And then finally, just following up, what happens during the course of a complaint process? So everything about our office is maintained around a complaint process is maintained in a shroud of privacy, okay? So until your complaint is before the Commission on Ethics in a private shade hearing, it will not be subject to a public records request or request from the press. And the reason why is so that if there are politically motivated complaints, or if there's really nothing to it but someone's filed a sworn complaint nonetheless, it needs to be addressed by the Commission, but it doesn't need to certainly tarnish anyone's reputation during the process until there's been a decision made by the Commission that there are reasonable facts and circumstances to believe that a violation of the code has occurred. Now, if you're ever asked to cooperate in an investigation, you must cooperate in the investigation up until the point that you have other concerns, either about your employment or about any due process rights that you may have. But most importantly, what if your manager tells you to do something that you believe is in violation of the code, or you believe that you might be retaliated against from reporting a violation of the code? We do issue with whistleblower status from our office, but more importantly, retaliation for a code violation that has been properly reported is a violation of the code itself. Okay? So please contact our office. We can certainly walk you through it. Many times we take anonymous complaints, and that's absolutely fine. Our investigators go out and address those issues. So if you ever have a question about it, please contact our office. We have the authority to issue fines up to $500 per charge, per violation. But the other thing about our conversation today is that all of these sections, except for the nepotism provision, are mirrored in the criminal code. Okay, so any willful knowing violation of this code could be prosecuted by a state attorney's office. That is it for me. Can I answer any questions for you? All right, well, thank you so much for your time today. I very much appreciate it. I will stick around and see if you have any personal situations you might want to describe. Be happy to do that for you, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for your attention.